So I think we need to keep the question in mind. When we form as a group, when Sapphire and Crystals put the other pieces together, and that's members, it's membership, will we be able to, as a group, bring together enough resources to put on a really first-class exhibition for, we're talking February of I think it's February, it might be April, but it's also my sense that a lot of women want to do what we're talking about needs to be done. There are about 5 or 6 generations of my folks out there on that hill. And it was a foreign land. I mean, you know, and they've given back to the land. So that's kind of nice. It's kind of nice. I kind of like being out there. I always knew one day I'd come back to this graveyard. Wow, what did you got in your hand? Some earth, some dirt. Wow. So, got to preserve some of this and take it back. I mean, you know, that completes, I guess, what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Looks familiar.
Well, Paul. Yeah. Paul.
Yeah.
I went to
Couple of days.
Mine as well.
Yeah, mine went on, you know, months. Yeah, that's what bothered me. And maybe.
Thank you.
Marva and I were mud peoples, the last two, and that was the start. And then Marva had this idea, well, let's do a women's show. So we decided to do, okay, let's do this. Now I've got this, he wanted to put it off a year. I said, I've got this committee, you know, Delta committee, ready to go on and help us put this together. Then we also asked Dorothy and one of my neighbors, Lynn Purdom, because she's a great typist and I'm a rotten one, okay? Oh, yeah. And Penny Williamson, who was working in Chicago State.
Yes, I remember her.
They came on board. A lot of that information is also in here, and people need to know and understand that. And Delta doesn't even realize they're part of it either. So I want this to be, all the accurate information to be out there so people can know who we were, how we got started, and, you know, and they're continuing on from here, that we are moving forward.
When I say Marva Joplin, just words that represent, that describe Marva Joplin.
Wonderful, great friend, loving, kind, artistic, creative, wonderful person to know.
My message that is good for black women, that is my specialty. I think that it's about something I want us to be about, and that is about success. We have nurtured everybody else's and not ours. I had just had my second son, and I was home on maternity leave.
And a couple of friends that had been away at school in Oklahoma contacted me and said they were a part of a group called Mud Peoples, and they wanted me to be a part of it. Marva, as a clay person or potter, was against the idea of me becoming a part of Mud Peoples, because she said that, but she's a painter. How could she be a part of this? And so she was not initially in agreement. However, she was listening. At that time, I was working with plaster on canvas and painting plaster on canvas. And this is a technique I've worked with over the years that I've refined over the years. And she overheard some plasterers referring to the plaster as mud. So that was what made her decide that I could be a part of Mud Peoples.
And one of the things she does is incorporate racial stereotypes into her work. So she does things like she'll take a black Sambo figure, and she takes the black Sambo and puts a rifle in each hand. So she takes a negative image and makes it her own and puts it in altars. And by taking a negative image and making it your own, then you give yourself a lot of power.
Marva was, a very strong-willed, determined person. I admired her because her art career was her second career. At some point, she decided to turn to art, and she devoted herself to it, and was determined to succeed.
I first met Marva when I was in the administration at Chicago State University. I had started doing some art, taking some workshops. One day, I just happened to mention it to Marva, and she said, "Oh, I'd like to see what you do." So she came by, and I had set up a little studio space on my sun porch. She came in and she looked at my art, and she said, "We got to get this art of yours out of your house and into an exhibition."
She was a strong sister and an interesting person. I got invited through, I think, Rose Blouin, to come to this meeting that Marva was organizing for women artists in her at her studio home. And so I went, and at that meeting, she unfolded her idea to start working to develop venues for women artists, which I was really interested in. So that day, we had a really wonderful discussion about putting together an exhibition and organizing ourselves as a collective.
I wanted to capture, in particular, families enjoying the park. I wanted to capture the social movements.
I think that was what our intention was, to celebrate Black women artists, and many of us had exhibited, of course, in group exhibitions with male artists, but I think we developed a sisterhood that really encouraged us to work together to create and to really promote the work of African American women artists. So that was very intentional on Marva and Felicia's part to pull together an exhibition of the African American women artists that they knew. Marva and Felicia were very close. They talked, shared a lot about their own art processes and their desire to continue to create art, to put it out there, to work with other women artists, and create something lasting. And so it has, 35 years we've been together, and we're still exhibiting, we're still nurturing each other. We tried to really be a collective, to work together, to create themes that all of us would create work for, to support each other. And that's because it's really hard being an artist and trying to get your work out into the world, and being a female artist at that, and being a Black female artist at that. I think working as a group, we had more, perhaps more visibility, exhibited in galleries all over the city and beyond.
Art institutions knew for some reason they had to reach out to us because we were here. You see, we weren't just sitting down. We were here. We were doing things. We were in our studios. We were creating art. It did not disband. How long has Sapphire and Crystal been going on? A long, long, long time. And it did not disband. That's what I like about it. Yes, it has changed over to younger people, younger artists coming in, because I can say for myself, I wasn't on the scene for almost 10 years, you see, due to other, health issues and all of that. And it may have been other members the same way, but the nucleus is still there.
At the very height of the group, there were only 6 members, and 1 member left first, then, and it was a mixed group, and 1 male, and then another male member left, and then there was a couple, and at one point they called and they were telling Marvin and I that they were leaving the group. Well, it was a winter evening, and Marvin and I was sitting in the car. We would warm our cars, and Marvin says, well, are you still in? Do you still want to be a part of this? And I'm like, yes, are you still in? And we agreed that because they left, that was not going to be the end of Mud Peoples. So Marvin said, I have had this idea that I would really like to do a show of African American women artists. And I said, okay, great, let's do it. So we began the process of putting together the ideas for this show, and first of all, locating what African American women artists that we knew.
I am extremely excited about the exhibition Divining Sapphire and Crystals. Is going to take place February the 7th at the Artemisia Gallery. Sapphire and Crystals is taking on a life of its own. We have gone from being the title of an exhibition to being a group of Black women artists.
So we started planning. And one of the things that we started trying to think of is, what are we going to call this? And Marva and I, as Mud Peoples was a working group, we had a practice of meditating and praying before we got started working. When we finally came up with the list, and because the whole aspect of this exhibition was, I would say, for lack of something better, a very spiritual journey for both of us, and the process of meditating and all of that, and reading books on meditation and spirituality and things like that, we began to come up with the title of the show. At one point, we came up with Sapphire, and initially we came up with the idea of Sapphire and Diamonds, but because we see crystals as a spiritual stone, we came up with Sapphire and Crystals. We were trying to get ready for the show, so we were at another meeting with another group. One of the male members was not real happy with the fact that we were putting together a show for women, and we were part of this mixed group. So they kind of made fun of us, because we had come up with this Sapphire. One of the guys laughed and made a remark about us being like the Sapphire in Amos and Andy. And we did not let that deter us. Two of the guys, I think, kind of laughed it off. And we said, we'll accept that, because we saw Sapphire as a very strong Black woman. And we'll say, okay, we'll take that, because we did not look at it as a negative. We saw it as a positive.
Teamwork makes the dream work. No man is an island unto himself. And in order to get things done, we have to learn how to get out of our ways, work together to make sure that we have what Dorian has brought to Auburn Gresham today. Dorian, we love you.
Wow, that's a lot of love. I just feel full right now with looking around at my team, looking around at the community that has embraced me, and man, getting this thing done, you just don't know. We've been rained on, we have been, toasted in the sun, we've been through it. But I'm just so proud to be here. I'm so proud to be a part of Auburn Gresham now. I can call it home. And this mural is a call to action. We are speaking of ideas. The mural is speaking about ideas of resilience, about peace, about brotherly love. And it is a testament to what happens when you combine civic love with the power of creative imagination.
A very dynamic person, very passionate about what she wanted to do, which is one of the reasons Sapphire and Crystals exist. She was a no-nonsense person.
Even just speaking back a little bit to the idea of her being a Virgo, that also is what was core to her aesthetic as a perfectionist.
Absolutely.
An organizer.
Absolutely.
And I was going to say it also being a little critical.
I was sculpting, and I had a sculpture on my table, and I just put a little flower in the vessel. She came over and she immediately took the flower out of the vessel and said, "This is not a flower pot. It's a sculpture, so don't ever put any flowers in your vessels again," and I haven't done it since.
Really, critiquing is
Right.
how the person takes it.
That's right.
Because without critical eye.
That's right. That's right. And Marva would
don't
bring
move
that
forward.
to the table.
Yeah.
I remember when we would even set up shows, when we were curating shows, and everybody brought their work, and we had it all stretched out. Marva was very firm about certain
Who made the cut?
right. Who made the cut? Right.
We had a couple of situations where some people had seen it and they wanted to be in it. They were black women, right? Mm-hmm. So they wanted to be in it, but their work was weak. And people were calling me in tears. I mean, and I thought, oh my God. And I'm saying to them, forgive me, but I'm going to have to do something, because the need is so great for some kind of expression, and there is another place for them. Sapphire and Crystals, I'm not sure, is that place.
For if you're going to be a collage artist, always look at your magazine upside down if you can, and you'll see other things. The hand is a reference to realizing that we are never, ever really alone, and that if we take the time to ask either the gods, the heavens, or your next door neighbor, there is someone in the world to help you, if you have the humility to ask. It was probably Arlene Crawford who invited me to participate. I remember my very first Sapphire and Crystals meeting was at the late and wonderful Marva Jolly's home on Hyde Park Boulevard. And it was for the postcard show. And it was Marva's idea that we all create pieces that were malleable. And the show was magnificent. And I was so thrilled by that directive that I thought about postcards and ephemera and what postcards from other people, real postcards, might have looked like. And so I created, I think it was 5 postcards that were ostensibly from Langston Hughes to different people in his life at different points in his life. And so all of them were historical in nature, biographical in nature, and beautiful, and I can do his signature to this day.
This was the first piece I bought by Juarez Hawkins, and I bought it at Helen West's gallery when she had a house gallery, and I'd had a hard day with a client, and it's called Cage Out, and you see right here, my goal was if I was having a bad day, I would have the person locked behind the screaming, and if I was having a good day, I would just shut this out. And so this is where you see her starting to do some of her clay work. And, in terms of paper and clay, when she's forming this face right here. And she later evolved into doing more clay work. But this is Cage Up. And based on this work, I later commissioned, you had asked me which one is my favorite. And based on that, Juarez had done a piece for Patrick for not just the Hyde Park's Not Just Another Pretty Face. And so I'd always had box envy. So I thought, what a wonderful testimony to my grandmother, my niece, and myself as a child, because we all have the name Olivia. My grandmother's name is Olivia, my niece is Olivia, and my middle name is Olivia. I gave her my father's biography. I described it, sent a lot of pictures. And I think she did such a wonderful job of capturing the energy of it. And a lot of times it's a good time for me to reflect, because she was no longer living, on what my grandmother meant to me and the relationship and just the strength that she had. And then in the middle is a locket with my grandfather, my grandmother's name, but that's my niece Olivia, and then that's me as a child. And the picture that she took that from was I had on my white gloves and I was holding my grandmother's hand. in the picture. So I just like that because it's a testimony to the females in my family. You know, women doing their thing. I don't know why anybody, you know, they've got their audience, and their audience, I think, follows them and they respect the work they do. And you see how they intersect in types of a lot of their members in terms of curating other shows, educating, and just creating art, because a lot of them are teachers. And so I think there's enough for everybody to go around. So you've got this group that likes these artists, you've got the other group that likes those artists. But I think for women to make sure that their stuff is shown and they're acknowledged for it, it's needed. So you always got the option not to show up. So, but when you show up, you always get a pleasant treat. I think they've been a continuum in the art scene, and a lot of their members have, you know, evolved and have gotten some solo shows, but then they come back to Sapphire and Crystals because I think they are a support group.
I believe it was like 2 months after my husband made his transition. So I can remember Marva coming here to check on me after he made his transition. And that was very comforting. But, you know, most of the time it was during the warm months. It was during the summer. So I would always close up the blinds so it would be fairly dark in here, trying to keep the house cool. And I think she thought I was pretty depressed, which I was, but you know, that didn't really have a lot to do with the blinds being closed. But it was her love and concern that made me appreciate her even more.
And my last interaction with Marva, she had stopped by my house, and it was the summertime, and we sat out in my backyard. I have a pond out there and lots of trees, and we just enjoyed sitting out by the pond and talking about art and having a smoke and, you know, just relaxing for a minute.
2 months after that, with her making her transition, that was a real jolt. Two of my favorite people, you know, leaving this earth plane at the same time was very difficult for me.
When we had the 25th anniversary exhibition, 2 weeks before the opening, Marva passed away. And even though her work was in the show, you know, it was just such a void not having her there. Marva was often the catalyst that brought people together in the collective.
let's open this up. There are artists like Elizabeth Catlett and Barbara Jones Hogu who speak of the need specifically of Black art to serve the people. What role, in your opinion, does art have on the very real issues people are dealing with today? Keep in mind that these women were speaking several decades ago, but thinking about what's going on in 2022, how does art have that role? What role does art play these days?
A lot of our art comes from within, us, and it comes out, and we share our emotions with people. I have one piece that I did is one of those. It's called Hearts on Parade, and these are these large hearts in the south side of Chicago, and they're going around the different neighborhoods in the south side of Chicago. And they're trying to bring neighborhoods, trying to bring people together and send messages to people so that we can unify.
When it comes to African American women's art, I think I see in this city a growth in that because of Sapphire and Crystals. However, when it comes to African American women artists in general, there's still so much more work that needs to be done.
What happened here on this land has a tremendous amount to do with the fact that I work with clay. Not so much that I'm an artist, but the fact that I work with clay. Because as a child, I spent my life in rainy days making mud pies. I mean, I have always been a mud person. I have always liked to work with clay, with mud. And so much of what I feel when I work with clay is what I felt as a kid playing, making mud pies, you know. Here's my aunt, you know, who also grew up down here, and neither one of us, we're both suffering to find out exactly where everything is, you know, and there isn't even a road that goes down there. So I think that that is real significant about, you know, we're tall, big women. We look like we came out of the ground, the land, you know, and that's real nice.
Dorothy, I'm here to pick up 2 pictures.
Awesome.
Cool. Anyway, so I want to get.
Being our best has brought success.
Right.
To many of us.
Right.
It's about really being your best and not spending energy on the obstacles, because when you do that, you're not building anything.
If we're going to continue as a collective, if we're going to thrive and be vibrant, then we need to take some steps, and I think we're committed.
Sapphire and Crystals and Divining, do we want people who view this exhibition to know? Okay? I want them to know that, number one, we have a right to define who it is we are and who it is we want to be. That nobody else has a right to define that, because we're Black women, and can't anybody tell me anything about what that means to be that.
I'm sure agree that our work is the culmination of our lives to this point. And each piece we make, we bring everything that we have, at least we try to.
Like I was stuck on a piece, and Renee and Faith came by.
I'm glad that I'm hearing everything today, because it's really opened and expanded my mind and my energy for what I can do for Sapphire and Crystals. It's not about me just making something that fits a Sapphire image of a sitcom from years ago, nor to do anything that deals with, say, a particular stone. It's about a certain energy that, to me, is being crystallized, and this is what I'm looking at.
We had support, okay, but the bulk of it really came out of just two women sitting in the kitchen, you know, like they used to do hair, drinking and smoking and dreaming, you know, and making tapes of it, and wondering if it would ever be, you know, and it is, you know, it's my own art has become strengthened because of some of these kinds of things that I'm doing. I grew up in Mississippi, had a sense of elegance to it in Mississippi because that's the way my mother did it. And I look at us and I think, well, hell, we had it the same way. Another generation of extremely talented black women. And we gotta do something with it, you know.